My story started when I found out that my husband had begun using cocaine and alcohol. We went from being a two-income family down to a no-income family because at the same time this happened, I was in the midst of losing my job because the school I worked for closed. And so I had to go to my father, and my father paid the rent until 2008 when he passed away. At that point, I realized that I had nothing and I had no idea how I was gonna be able to pay rent. I had gotten a notice to quit. They took me to housing court. I had never been in court in my entire life up until that point. Was like, oh my God, where am I gonna go? We're gonna be in the streets, I can't do this. And because I had no idea what my rights were, I had no idea what to do, and I just figured if I signed on the dotted line that it would at least buy me some time, that maybe I would, by some grace of God, I would find a job or something else would come up. The first time I applied for food stamps and public assistance, I was already stressed about it anyway, but when I walked through the door and saw all these people, and you're treated like you're kind of less than, you're a number. The person that I spoke with came across like I was bothering them. In order to get financial assistance, I would have had to find, like describe my husband, give them his name, his address, where he was from, his weight, his height, the whole 9 yards. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Why am I giving you all this information? And when they explained to me, it was because they couldn't give me financial assistance unless they could go after him. I was like, forget it, I can't do this. And he said that he could give me the food stamps, but financial assistance I couldn't get. And so I was like, fine, whatever. I faxed over the other information I needed, and I got food stamps for everybody that was in the house at that point. I had never experienced it in my whole life. I grew up in a very middle-class family. My father was a firefighter. My mother was a nurse. And I guess to get to a position where I needed to depend on somebody else was ludicrous. And then eventually there came a point when I was being literally yelled at to go get a job. The jobs I'm going to be able to apply for are minimum wage jobs, and if I work full time, they're going to deduct what I get out of my food stamps. And there's a potential that I could potentially have lost my Mass Health. I couldn't afford to lose the Mass Health because my kids needed the mental health services, and private insurance does not pay as the way Mass Health pays for those kinds of services. And I chose to not get a full-time job so that my kids could get what they needed, because that was more important to me than me working. As much as at that point I had never not worked since I was 14. I think the whole process it's belittling. You're left feeling like, I don't know, you just don't belong, like, on the face of the earth sometimes. I just couldn't, financially I had, I was at everybody's mercy. Do errands so I could make a couple of bucks, or just to have gas in the car, to be able to get the kids places, and I just felt like I couldn't do it anymore. I was having trouble keeping a roof over their head, keeping their stomachs full, and clothes on their back, and I just felt like they would be better off without me. At least they would go to people who could afford to take care of them, and they wouldn't have to worry about things, whereas if they stay with me, they're only going to have to worry. The people said to me, City Mission, they have a 2-year program, we'll make the referral. And because I was desperate and I had nowhere to go, I didn't know what to do or how to do it, and so I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I made the 2-year commitment for the Lift Up program. There were many times where I had given up hope. I didn't want to go on anymore. I felt like my kids would be better off without me, and I became suicidal. I got a phone call from the social work intern asking me if everything was okay, saying, we missed you at last group, just want to check in and make sure things are okay. And I just kind of answered, yeah, they're as good as they're going to be. And she asked if there was anything they could do to help, and I said, there's nothing anybody can do. I said to her, I just feel like jumping in front of a train or off the bridge. And she said, do you have a plan? And I said, I always have a plan in my head, I just don't always follow through. She continued to talk to me for a little while, asked me if I could go in that day to talk to her the next day. And I said, I can't go in today, I have too much to do. I can come in tomorrow. She called me back to give me the 1-800 suicide prevention hotline, as well as parent stress hotline, and asked if there was anything that they could do to help. And I just said, no, I'll see you tomorrow. They, like any other times, they were there, that I felt like that. While I was in the Lift Up program, I came to the realization that, one, I could not continue to live the way we were living, and I couldn't afford to stay on Mass Health and food stamps for the rest of my life. My kids were getting older, and I needed, for my own sanity, something to feel useful. In the midst of feeling like I wasn't good enough, and in the midst of every other week wanting to jump off a bridge or in front of a train, I, on a whim, decided that, okay, I've been out of education so long now, I haven't taught in years, I would have to go back to school and get my master's in education. I decided to go ahead and try, with the expectation that there is no way I'm going to get accepted. And I sent for all the applications and all that stuff, and went into total panic because, okay, how was I going to pay for this? Probably a month after the last recommendation had been submitted, I got a letter in the mail saying that I had been accepted to the only school I applied to, which was Salem State. I sat in my car for an hour before, watching all these 24 and 25-year-old kids walk through the door, and here I was in my late 40s, early 50s, and like, I can't do this. To the point where I was emailing my therapist saying, I'm not going in there, I can't go in there with all these kids, it's stupid. And she kept saying, just go in, just go in. And I finally got up the nerve and I went in, and I started the program the following September. I started graduate school, not without many trials and many tribulations and many all-nighters, because I still had 4 kids to look out for, and to provide for, and to be there at any whim that any doctor or school called me. I ended up on academic probation because they couldn't tell whether or not I was learning what I needed to learn, and because I was late for classes sometimes due to problems with my children. I opted to take the maximum amount of money I could take on a school loan, which was $20,000, and that way I could pay my rent, I could buy them food and any clothes that they needed, and pay for stuff for school and stuff. And so May of 2015, I graduated with my master's degree in social work, which was a surprise, that I didn't think I would really make it through. And I had an advisor in my first year and a half that really thought there was no way I was going to ever make it through. And at the very end of that, he said to me, when I first had you, I thought for sure you were never going to finish. And I just looked at him and said, I proved you wrong. The one thing I've learned about City Mission and a Lift Up is that once you graduate from the program, it doesn't end, that you can continue to call them, they're there for support. They had a position at City Mission where It's only a part-time position, and they knew that I was still struggling and looking for work, so they asked me if I wanted the position. So I currently work part-time at City Mission doing data entry, and I do social engagements at churches to make people aware, to tell my story, to make people aware of homelessness. They view homelessness as your alcoholic or drug addict sitting in like Harvard Square, laying all over the thing, dirty, having no clothes, or having dirty clothes and begging for money and stuff. Whereas I am, you know, an educated white woman with my master's degree, and I could at any point end up back there. But I also have people that will say, one day at a time, you can't think about 3 years from now, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. And so I put that aside, but it's always on the back of my mind. It's always, you know, if I end up homeless, what's going to happen? You know, I can end up homeless. I could live out of my car if I needed to. I don't want that for my kids. And so it's a struggle. It's, you know, one, I'm a survivor, and I will do what I need to do to survive. I will find whatever it is. But I think the other piece to that is my spirituality is really strong, and that I think ultimately, no matter what happens, everything happens for a reason, and that God will make sure that we're provided for. And so that pulls me through a lot, but I also have, I still have City Mission that I can go to. And so just having like that place that you can still go to, and it doesn't matter where you are financially, where you live, if you're homeless, if you're not, if you own a house or $1 million home, or we've all kind of struggled across the board with some of the same stuff, and that's. But the most important one is you're not alone. There are other people who are out there who have either experienced it or in the middle of it. Try to find places that you can connect with them so that you realize that you're not alone. It keeps that hope alive and burning. Don't give up. You're not by yourself.